Welcome back to another episode of Trading Secrets. Today I am joined by renowned talk show host Steve Wilkos. Most of you know Steve for one of two things: the head security in the one and only Jerry Springer, or as the host of the long-standing talk show, The Steve Wilkos Show, or both, since 2007. What you may not know is Steve is a United States Marine Corps veteran and was a Chicago Police Department law enforcement officer for 14 years. He has established himself as an authoritative figure known for his abrasive yet constructive approach to helping guests on his show settle disputes and better themselves moving forward. Steve, the viewers have been asking for you. We got you, and we are so excited to have you today. Thanks for being on Trading Secrets.
Thanks for having me on.
And first and foremost, I want to thank you for your service. And second, we're going to give you a pop quiz right here. We're talking money. We're talking career navigation. I'm putting you on the spot. What do you think makes more money, your social media or your TV show?
Well, as far as what money goes in my pocket?
For the overall show gross revenue.
Well, I think I'm guessing it's my show, but I certainly think that the growth in digital media is growing greatly. So for example, I never got money for social media, like a cut or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But last year, like all of a sudden, we were doing something, shooting like some digital stuff, and if you saw the guy out there, what's his name? The bald guy? Eric. He goes, "Oh, you join that digital money?" I'm like, "I didn't get it." He goes, "Oh yeah, you're going to be getting a check," and check came and it was quite a bit of money, and so then just last week I got another check. So I do think that digital is going to be a great stream of revenue for the show. But I still think right now the show probably generates more money than the digital side. But I could see that changing in the future.
Yeah, for sure. So this might be news to you. But some things we do here is we talk about pay transparency. I was in the back there drilling your producers. We own a talent management company. I see your numbers. I'm like, you guys got to be killing it. Yeah. They said the number one producer for gross revenue right now is YouTube with 1.7 million followers. So there we go. There you go. But the show is killing it. It's on its 16th season, just premiered in October. We're going to get into the details of the show, what led you to the show. Before we do that, the trajectory of your career from being a United States Marine Corps to then being a cop and launching your way into Hollywood is something that's extremely unconventional. I want to learn how that happened. Before I do, there might be people out there that are interested in general in just the law enforcement career. Right now in 2021, the average cop made $65,000. So when you joined to be a cop, what was his salary like then and what made you do it?
So my starting salary was in 1990. I got on the police department. I made $26,500, and I just transitioned out of the Marine Corps, where I was making, as a sergeant with 6 years of service, I was making like $12,000. Right. So I felt like I was rich, and I had a Dodge Colt that was paid off, and I had a basement apartment that I was paying $450 a month in rent. So I was feeling pretty good about myself. But the reason why I became a police officer and went into the Marines was my father was a paratrooper in the Korean War or Korean conflict. And then he was a Chicago police officer. So my dad, when I was a kid, he was like Superman, so mm-hmm. I wanted to be just like my father. And so, I was kind of a screw up in high school. And my dad's like, listen, go into the military, you'll, straighten out and, you'll have something. Because a lot of my friends, some of my friends were just bums hanging around the block after high school. Nobody went to college, but, in our neighborhood, no males went to college. So I wanted to do something in my life, and that's why I went into the Marines, and it was the best decision I ever made. And then, like I said, I got out. I wanted to be a policeman just like my father, and I was going to do it for 30 years and retire from the police department just like my dad did. And but then one day I got asked to work security on the Jerry Springer Show. I didn't even know who Jerry was. And I went there to work for one day, and one day turned into 28 years later, I'm still here.
Okay, we're going to talk about how you got that call. Before we do, there might be some parents out there that have kids that are serving right now, or there might be some kids listening right now that are serving. What advice, knowing what you know now about Hollywood, entertainment, making it big, to also the perception of making it big by doubling your salary from $12K to $26K when you got out, what type of advice would you have for someone coming out of military work right now and entering into the work world?
I'm sorry. What is the exact question?
So people that are leaving the military right now and going to serve, what advice would you have for them transitioning into the professional work?
What I would say is start preparing. Like, I enlisted for 3 and then I re-enlisted for 4, and there was a 6-month overlap. So I ended up doing 6.5 years. But when I got to 5 years, I was going to sign up for another 5 years after my 6 years, and that would have took me at 11, 12 years. I definitely would have did 20 years in the Marine Corps and got a pension. But I wanted to go to embassy duty when I signed my next contract. And they, the Marine Corps, they tell you one thing and then they do whatever they want. So they were like, oh, go back out in the fleet and then we'll give you embassy duty. Well, then I said, okay, maybe it's time to get out of the Marine Corps, go back to Chicago. And so when I knew, and I had like a year and a half before I was going to get out, I started making plans about, I didn't want to get out of the Marine Corps and have nothing. So I kept in touch with like a lot of buddies in Chicago. I knew the police test was coming out. So I flew back to Chicago. I took the police test. So I was trying to line up things before I got out so that as soon as I got out of the Marine Corps, I hit the ground running. I could have collected unemployment. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work. And so even the day I got out, I lined up a nightclub job, bouncing in a nightclub I was working at for a few months. And then about 9 months later, I got called to the police academy. So I would say be prepared. Don't just get out and then start looking. When you know that when you make your decision that you're going to transition out of the military, kind of get ahead of the curve.
I like that. And then when you went to Chicago Police Department, how many years did you serve before you ended up taking off?
Well, I did. I was on the police department from March of 1990, and I left it 1 week before September 11th.
Oh my gosh!
Just coincidentally, right?
Wow.
What happened was I left. I took a leave of absence, and then I resigned a few years later. But I took a leave of absence because I was making quite a bit of money on Springer. I mean, nothing like I'm making now, but pretty good salary, much more than a policeman's salary. And I married my wife, who ended up being the executive producer of Springer, and she's the executive producer of my show now. And she said, listen, I would come home, and I worked in a very violent district in Chicago, and I would come home with blood on my uniform, and my wife would be like, she didn't understand, like, people just, didn't stick their arms out and put the handcuffs on and go to jail. Like, I go, people fight us. I had to explain it to her. I'm like, we have to use a lot of force sometimes to effect arrest. So she didn't get that. So one time I came home, my uniform was just like I took a tomato soup bath, right? Like, she goes, that's it, you're quitting, And I said, you know what, maybe you're right. Because she broke it down to me. She goes, listen, when the Springer show's over, we're not staying and living on your policeman's salary. She goes, I'm a TV producer. We're going to go to LA or we're going to go to New York, and you'll find your thing to do, but I'll be producing. I said, you know what, right? And I took a leave of absence from the police department. And my dad, you only got 8 more years to pension.
Yeah, pension, get paid out.
And my dad didn't understand the kind of money I was making. And so, and even like as soon as I left, because I was so busy between the police department and working on a Springer show, I didn't have a lot of free time. So when I left the police department, all of a sudden I would do these autograph circuit through these car shows all over the country, and I'd make $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in 2 days' work. Well, that's more than I made during a whole month being a policeman.
Yeah.
So the money that I lost being a policeman, I made up, just doing a few appearances throughout the year.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the world when I had my MBA, 10 years corporate banking, move all over, get myself up the corporate ladder to tell my parents I'm going on a reality dating show. To say the least, they weren't thrilled. But then when I started dropping, Dad, I'm getting paid $10K to show up to this bar. Yeah. Like, what the hell? I don't believe it until I see it. And then they saw it. Let's talk about that transition. So how long, though, before you left, Were you managing these crazy worlds of being on TV, the security of Jerry Springer, and then going to serve as a policeman? How long was that? What was that balance like?
So in 1994, like I said, I got on the police department in 1990. In 1994, Mike McDermott, who's still on my show, we were policemen together in 14th District. He was already working through Pinkerton. When the show needed security guards, they would call Pinkerton. Well, there was these guys there. They cut Pinkerton out and said, "Hey, don't call Pinkerton, call us directly." So Mike was one of those guys, and he said, I was walking on a station, he knew another guy. He said, "Hey, you want to work security?" And I said, "What is it?" And he goes, it's a talk show on TV. You got to wear a suit and tie, be there. I said, "Great, I'm there."
What does he offer you, like a pay wise?
$35 an hour.
Okay.
No, I'm probably making 22 as a cop.
Sure. So it sounds good.
35 an hour. I'm like, oh, I'm in.
I'll throw a tie on.
Exactly. And so I went there, and like I said, it was supposed to be for one day. I went there, nothing happened. I mean, I have very vague memories of my first day there. Well, they knew they could always call me and I'd be there. So it was this sheriff that was actually running the show, and Mike worked for him. So the sheriff, he would call me. He didn't even know who I was, but he was a guy that he knew I could count on. So this guy was kind of unreliable, though. The show would call him, and he'd be like, he wouldn't show up, this and that. But he had the gig, and he was running things. Well, one day we had this big show, and it was going to be, a lot of conflict and, supercharged an audience. Well, he doesn't show up, so they call him up, and they're like, "Hey, man, where are you?" And he said, "Well, my wife's got the car. Send a limo for me." Like the show would send limos for guys.
Yeah.
And this young producer, he just hung up the phone on him. He looked at me and goes, "Hey, you want to run security here?" I go, "Yeah."
Just like that.
Boom, man. Like all of a sudden I went from nobody, low man at Toll, I was running security. And, and at first, like we didn't play a big role on the show. But they would need to find a guest in Seattle, and I'd get on a plane. I'd go to Seattle, and I'd go track that person down, or they'd have a problem with the guest. They had to be babysitted all night long in a hotel, and I did it. So whatever the show asked me, I did it because I knew, man, like, I'm getting my foot in the door. It was pretty good. And it was funny because then a stage manager left the Springer show and started because Danny Bonaducci was just starting in Chicago.
Okay.
And he called me up and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you run security here at Danny." And this is before Springer was a hit.
Okay.
And he goes, "We'd love for you to run. We'll pay you more to come over and do Danny Bonaducci's security." And I was like, "Nah, I'm good here." And it was the best call of my life because I don't think Bonaducci made it out of his first year, and I certainly would have got my own TV show out of Bonaducci. But so staying on Springer really worked out, and so. Then the show did start changing format, and it were conflict driven. There was fights, and I'd be on stage a lot, breaking up fights, and then when we first doing it, we were wearing our own clothes, suit and ties, and then we start wearing Jerry Springer security shirts. And the old executive producer of Springer, we were doing Springer Break from Daytona Beach, and he said, "Why don't you shave your head?" Now, I didn't have hair like you. I had Marine Corps style hair. And he said, "I'm going to make you a star." I said, "Well, sounds good to me." So I went and I shaved my head, and I looked like Jesus with the thorn crown put on his head because I nicked my whole head up. And but it was crazy because, and this was like 1997, before email, and I didn't even have a computer. People write letters still, man. All of a sudden, Miracle on 34th Street, when everybody's writing their letters in the sand and bags of mail are coming in. That's how it was. I mean,
really,
bags of mail coming in, mail, women sending me pictures. It was crazy. And then I became just a big part of the show. People start chanting my name, and but I still was a policeman, because from 94 when I started, I didn't leave the police department until 2001. And 97, 98 was the zenith of the Springer show, when it was the number one show in the world, So here I am working on this hit show. And then I would go work as a cop for 8 hours. And there was times I'm flying all over Europe with Jerry. You know, we're going to London and Amsterdam, and you know, I'm staying in world-class hotels and flying first class. And then, you know, I'm working in the dregs, man. Like, you know, stuffing on back, putting that in squad car, getting cramped up for 8 hours, freezing cold weather, holidays, weekends. So it was an interesting time in my life, to say the least.
I thought going from being a banker to being on a dating show was a big move, but being a cop serving for the public to Jerry Springer is the definition of literally like A to Z. In my world, what happened is those worlds collided.
Yeah.
I eventually got fired because of something that happened in my personal world.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a scenario in which you were managing 7 years of this Jerry Springer role versus cop role where your job was put into question?
Oh, yeah. I would tape from 9 to 3, but, you know, taping would run long. And I'd be, you know, I was supposed to be at roll call at 4 o'clock. And it was funny because my commander and my watch commander loved the show, loved the Springer Show. Didn't give me a hard time at all. But everybody below them gave me a hard time. Mm-hmm. So, like, I come in, I check in with my lieutenant, I go, hey, boss, sorry I'm late. And the sergeant would then come up to me and go, Wilkos, give me a slip for an hour, because you would build up a bank of overtime. Like you could take it in money or time. I always took time because I was making enough money on the show.
Sure.
I needed time off from the police department to go on trips with Jerry and travel and stuff. So I always took time. Well, I didn't want to give an hour of time for being, you know, 10 minutes late because this dickhead sergeant wants 15, you know, slip from me. And, you know, one time, you know, I said, hey, man, I was so pissed. I wrote up the slip. I gave him an hour. And I said, I'll see you in the parking lot after our shift. And, you know, that probably wasn't the wisest thing to do, but I was so mad because, you know, people are jealous, right? And, you know, truthfully, some of it you bring on to yourself a little bit, but not so. Like, you know, I had, you know, a Mercedes convertible. Mm-hmm. You know, most cops aren't driving Mercedes convertibles. Sure, you know, you're pulling into the parking lot. I mean, other people resent it. A lot of guys were like, hey, good for you. And I hired a lot of cops. A lot, you know, show everybody was just a hard ticket to get. I took care of all the cops getting tickets to the show. So a lot of guys were happy, but, you know, other guys, they don't, you know, just like in any field, there's jealousy. And I mean, my life was, you know, pretty damn good at the time, man. So, you know, some guys tried to give me a hard time.
Did you meet that guy in the parking lot?
No, he never showed up. I mean, that guy. I mean, and he, you know what? He never asked me for another slip again either.
There you go. Yeah. All right. So 94 to 2001, you already dropped the numbers when you started as a cop, 26.5. When you left the police force, how much were you making in 2001?
I want to guess like 45 to 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Straight pay.
Straight pay.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing we talk about often is you said you were making enough money on the show. You weren't really focused on overtime as a police officer.
I wouldn't even pick up my paychecks.
Come on.
Because, you know, I mean, when I was making like $250,000 on Springer.
Wow.
Being a security guy. So, you know, back then there was no direct deposit on. You would get a check.
Sure, yeah.
Well, you'd have to go into the station to get the check. Well, I'm like, I'll pick them up when next time I'm in the station, which sometimes 3 pay periods would go by, you know, and then I'd get 3 checks and, you know, so, you know, honestly, it just, the police check was just so, it was peanuts to me at that point. You know what I mean? Such
wild worlds.
Yeah.
The one thing we talked about the audience is how do you negotiate? How do you understand your value? I'm thinking a guy like you, how the hell do you negotiate with Jerry Springer? What's the benchmark? There's not another Jerry Springer director of security. You're making $35 an hour. How do you work your way to $250K a year and beyond?
That's interesting because you're right. I had no idea to value. I was in the military. I was in the police. So this is interesting. Andrew Savage, who was on Survivors.
Yeah. Yep.
He was in season 3 or 4. He was one of the first guys voted up because he was like one of those powerful dudes that they knew, like, you got to get him out of that tribe.
Yep.
Well, he was an attorney for NBC, and he was there, and I had no clue, but he kind of like, he did it for me. Like first contract I got was for like $75,000, and then the show really like boom overnight like exploded. And then he's like, "Hey, I got you 150," and then he like got me to 250, and So, like, I owe him a lot because, you know, he was kind of watching out for me, you know, and he's the kind of guy that, you know, and like I said, I didn't have an agent or, you know, I didn't even think along those lines. I still thought of myself as a cop to be in this fortunate position. And the Springer Show was my side job. Even though I was making
way more,
5 times more than what I was making as a cop, I still identified as a cop.
How many hours comparably were you working on the show versus being a police officer? Like
so back then we taped the Springer Show 3 days a week. So I was there from 9 in the morning till 3, 4 in the afternoon. And then I worked as a cop from 4 to midnight. And then I worked in the bars from midnight till 4 in the morning.
Damn.
So, I mean, I don't know how I ever saw my wife.
I was going to say.
So we spent any time together. But she did, like, sometimes come to the bar and hang out with me while I was working security because
that's cool.
Otherwise we would have never saw each other.
All right. Then when did rubber meet the road where you said, cop job, I'm done. Full-time Jerry Springer?
Well, that's the story I was telling you. I came home covered in blood.
That was it.
And my wife's like, you're leaving. And we got married in 2000. And then 2001, she was like, you know, and like I said, it was a week before September 11th. And I just had back surgery too. So I was not thrilled about thinking about sitting in a squad car for 8 hours. And here's the other thing. I worked in patrol the whole time I didn't have any special assignment, cushy job. I was in patrol, working the streets. So when I left, all of a sudden I got all these people calling me, oh man, I would have took care of you. I go, yeah, 12 years
What the hell
to
was
take care
that
of
before?
Why'd you wait till I left? Like, I needed a lifeline because, you know, a lot of guys start out, you work in patrol and you become a detective or you get some cushy job working down in motor vehicles or some office job. I mean, you know, I liked being a street cop, but it was wearing on me too. You know, I was getting hurt and, you know, you're working 6 days on, 2 days off. You're working holidays. You know, it's not good, man. You know, so we're working weekends. So, you know, like the Springer Show, I remember like we'd have rap parties at the end of the taping season, which would end back then in June.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have this big party and everybody's like, oh, I'm off for the summer. And I'm like, I got to go to work tomorrow. Like, you know, and even when I got married, here, you know, my wife's making good money. I'm making good money. We got married in July, and I had to go we got married on a Friday. Saturday, we went to the Cubs game, and then, you know, all our friends, we went to the casino. Well, Sunday, I was back at work, man, working a squad car. And then I worked for like 10 days, and then we went on our honeymoon because that's when my furlough started. So then we went on vacation. Well, that's not a great life, man.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're making. I mean, I was making more than the mayor of Chicago. You know what I mean?
That is
like,
crazy. So it wasn't, and the reason I kind of brought it up again, it was never really money driven. It was more of the work life,
quality of life.
Quality of life. Okay.
And knowing that once the Springer Show was over, I'm not sticking around probably in Chicago anyways. So what's the point? I wasn't going to get a pension either way.
All right. So we're going to get into the next steps for Steve here. But before we do that, when it comes to the Jerry Springer Show, we already talked about negotiation. You leave full time. You're working there full time. We talk a lot about annual reviews and annual raises. What the hell does an annual review at Jerry Springer look like? Like, how do they determine what success is and how do you get raised?
You know, I didn't have the job where I got reviewed. You know what I mean? Because I was considered talent. I had a talent contract.
Gotcha.
So I wasn't like an employee, you know, like everybody else was. I eventually got a talent contract, and because I was on TV and so much and all that. So I never got really reviewed. I mean, it was so crazy because one time the producer, this big fat guy was on stage, right? And the producer goes like this, meaning pull his pants down. So I pulled his pants down. Well, unbeknownst to us, he didn't have any underwear on.
Oh, jeez.
So he stand in front of 250 people with his ding-a-ling showing. And he ended up suing us. And the lawyers come in, and I got a reprimand. It's the only time on the show they gave me this written warning. And I'm like, wait a second, man. I'm doing what the boss told me to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kind of knew that thing, like, I better just keep my mouth shut, take it, and move on from there. But that's the only time I ever really, like, got in trouble on the show.
Okay, interesting. Well, you get reprimanded, and then it's all uphill from you. So another thing we have in common, my fiance went on Dancing with the Stars. She won in 2020. Jerry Springer goes on Dancing with the Stars.
How I got my show.
And that's how you got your show, right? So tell everybody that doesn't know what opportunity came about when Jerry went on Dancing with the Stars.
So they, that was kind of like back then. I really don't keep up with things, but like back then, Dancing with the Stars was a new show, and it was huge. And, people that were on Dancing with the Stars was like, it could give you a big career boost. So Jerry was doing it. This was, I want to say this is 2005. Yeah, this is 2005. And so they said, he's terrible, like dancer. I don't know if Jerry could dance or not. I spent the last 13 years of my life with him, but I had no idea if he could dance or not. I didn't even ask him. So he's going to do it. And they come to me and they said, well, we can't really shut the production. We don't want to shut the production of the show down while he's gone. So you'll host that week of shows. He'll be voted off first and he'll come back. So you'll do it for a week. And it's funny because I said, well, I talked to the company lawyer and I said, well, what am I going to get paid for that? And they're like, paid? What do you mean? I go, what do you mean? I said, I'm not a talk show host. I'm director of security. And they didn't want to pay me anything.
Interesting.
And I said, well, then I'm not doing it.
Get out of here.
And they're like, this is your opportunity. And back then I thought it was all bullshit. Like, I'm never going to, like, why would I get a show? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I said, well, no, then I'm not doing it. And I really meant it. Like, no, man, like we would work on Jerry Springer uncensored tapes. Well, the company's making all this money.
Sure.
We're not getting a dime of it.
Yeah.
So I put my foot down. I go, I'm not doing anything that is not my job, and you're not going to pay me. So they came back and I think they paid me a couple $1,000s every show that I hosted on top of my pay.
Okay.
So they're going to.
Did you get a base pay? You said on top of your pay. What was it? Just a base pay?
At that time, I was making like $250,000.
Okay, and then it's the $1,000 per show.
So now they're going to give me $2,000 for every show I host.
Got it.
Well, you would tape 2 shows a day, 3 days a week. So it was like an extra $6,000 a week. Wait, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12. No, it's more.
Yeah.
It's $12,000.
Yeah.
It was a nice chunk of change. And so the lawyer goes to me and goes, well, did you talk to the executive producer at the time? I said, I don't need to talk to anybody. You pay me or get somebody else. Knowing there is nobody else. Because he goes, I go, listen, if you brought anybody else in to host the show, you'd have to pay him, right? He goes, yeah. I go, well, I'm somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and knowing what you know now, they probably had to pay him more than $1,000 a show.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
But, again, not having a lawyer, not having an agent, and Andrew Savage was long gone at this point.
Okay.
So, I'm kind of doing my own thing. Okay. So I do the shows. Boom. Jerry's doing another week of shows. Boom. I'm doing the shows. 3 weeks go by. 4 weeks go by. 5 weeks go by. I'm doing all these shows. When these shows air, the ratings are really good. They thought maybe they're going to go down.
Sure.
They didn't go down. Some even went up. So when Jerry gets back, he's like, hey, Steve, will you do Monday shows? And I'm like, as long as I'm getting that pay, yeah. So he would occasionally take Mondays off. Well, the next season came around. He's like, hey, can you do Monday shows? Because, Jerry's a very big star at that time. He's got other things going. So, yeah, no problem. Well, then somebody's light bulb went off. See, a lot of people want to take credit for me. Oh, Steve's a big star. Bullshit. That's the biggest lie ever told. The fact that the ratings went up and I'm doing these shows, any moron could say, this guy should be given an opportunity.
Sure.
He's hosting a show. The ratings are good when he hosts it. So all these people that want to take credit for me, discover me, that's crazy. I mean, I was a security guard that this fluke of nature break in life. And so I did get a phone call. And I was like, it was like a Sunday night, I want to say, and I'm watching All in the Family. I'm drinking a vodka tonic. My wife's in bed. My kids are sleeping. I get this phone call, and I thought somebody was screwing around. Oh, this is so-and-so from NBC. We're giving you your own show. And I thought it was one of my friends screwing around. But it turned out it's the real deal. I go up to my wife. I wake up. I go, I got my own TV show. And we, there was always talk about it, but we said, who's going to give me a show? So we always said, no way. But then she's like, "Oh my God, are you drunk?" And I said, "No, I'm not drunk. It really happened."
Too many vodka.
But then it was like this realization, like, "Oh my God, I'm going to do. What am I going to do?" You know what I mean? Like
shit.
Yeah, like now we got to come up with some kind of concept. Of, it's like when you watch old Seinfeld. Oh, Jerry, we'd like to be in business.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of show do you want to do? How about if I work in an antique store? That's
you're just pulling shit from left field.
Right, like so. But then, my wife really was the one who said, "Listen, man, you're a cop. You deal with people on the streets, and we're going to do stories that So she really came up with the concept of the show.
The creative. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Stay tuned to the recap. We're going to talk a little bit about ratings. I have some friends in the producer world, and it is crazy these days how they can see to the second how ratings are being increased and decreased based on what's happening. So there's numbers behind those decisions. Question for you I have that I think anyone at home in any job or the relationship could probably take away from. You got the opportunity to host the show, Jerry Springer. Ratings went up. You did something that connected with the audience. What do you think it was that you did that allowed you to connect with this community and increase ratings while the
I think, I was kind of like the protector on the Springer Show. Like I broke up the fights. I stopped people from basically beating the shit out of each other. And, and people knew I was a policeman, So I think people looked at me as, and then we started doing these segments before I got my own show called Steve to the Rescue, where they sent me out to people's like towns and I'd get them out of trouble or some bad situation. So I think people liked that. Like, they felt like, oh, wow, Steve's somebody I could turn to. And I've always said it, like when people, if I'm somewhere, out in public in the airport, people come up to me. It's not like they're meeting Brad Pitt, he's going crazy, but they're, kind of happy and they're like almost meeting somebody that they've known for a long time. They're real comfortable with like the everyday guy, like I'm your neighbor, like I'm the policeman on the street, I'm your friend. So I think there's that connection with the people at home. And I think that's what my success has been.
Something about the relatability factor is huge. Guys, if you haven't seen the Steve Wilkos Show, it has been on for 15 years now. You can find it on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Collectively, over 6 million followers on all those. So go check it out. If someone's listening to this and they haven't seen the show, how would you summarize for the listener that's never seen your show?
It's about getting the truth, man. And people that have nowhere else to turn, they're the last line of defense for them. They come on the show and we get them the truth. It's a hard-hitting show. It's a show we deal with a lot of hard topics, but it's like I said, it's people. We get justice for people.
Okay, and they call you 15 years ago and tell you you're going to give you this job. You're going to be the host of your show. Realistically, did you think you'd be here 15 years from now premiering season 16?
No. Because I seriously thought, even do I want to do this? Because, when you go, most new shows fail. I mean, that's, and I saw that, like, from the time I started working at Springer until I got my own show. I mean, remember the girl from The Cosby Show? She got a show, and, Danny Bonaducci and Richard Bay, just like tons of people. I mean, more than I can ever remember, people getting TV shows and getting canceled.
Sure.
So I'll never forget when I got my show, I was in LA, had to do the big press junket, and people were laughing at me. I mean, laughing. They're like, back then it was 13 weeks. It wasn't even a year option, and they're like, you're not going to last 13 weeks. And I've never failed at anything in my life. I mean, I've done stupid things.
Sure.
But I've never, like, when I joined the Marine Corps, guys I knew from my neighborhood didn't make it. And they came home and their heads were shaved and they're like not Marines. Like, you don't go, you're not going to make it. I go, I'm making it. Then people are like, you won't get on the police department. I'm getting on the police department. So when people are like, you're going to fail in the first 13 weeks, I go, I don't know how long I'm going to last, but I'm going to last past 13 weeks. I guarantee you that. And, and here's the thing. I've always worked hard. I'm not that guy that half-ass. I can't half-ass anything. Yeah. Like, there's times I come into the show, I'm like, I don't feel like it. I go, I don't care about today. But then I hit that stage, and it's like, I can't even not, like I get so invested into it. And so, and I tell people all the time, you don't get to where I'm at half-assing it or being lazy And I am lazy in my personal life, but my professional life, I'm not lazy. You know what I mean? Like I work really hard at what I do. And I did travel to every market in the country and do every interview and, promote the show and do like even today. Today's my day off. I'm here shooting digital stuff all day long. I could say, no, I don't want to do it, but I do it because I know it's good for the show, So, you got to bust your ass to be a success in this world.
I saw the cheese boards out there. He's definitely on TikTok trends. Impressive. I'm not even on those trends. Real quick, was there any animosity from Jerry when you got this opportunity, or was it met with support?
Listen, man, Jerry, I love that man, and I think he loves me, and we've been friends for 28 years now, and there's never been animosity. That guy, we've never had an unkind word for each other. He's the best. He's been nothing but good and generous and kind, and I can't say not one. This is a guy that's never yelled at anybody since I've known the man.
Damn.
Like, you think about celebrities, like, remember Steve Harvey sent out that crazy email about, don't come up to me,
Don't look at Ellen has all these things. Like, the list goes on.
Right, people
prima
like,
donnas.
and he never, he was the biggest star in the world at one time.
Yeah.
He was the biggest star in the world. And that guy doesn't ask for anything special.
I love that.
Give me, hamburger, for,
what
I mean? Like, he's just great, man. And like, I never saw him. And I'm sure maybe there was times I did something that probably annoyed him. He didn't let me know.
Okay. Interesting. I love that. I love that he supported you. Sounds like an awesome guy. You talked a little about your compensation on that show. I don't know if you can share or not, but how has your life changed from a compensation standpoint, not being the director of security, but being the host of the Steve Wilkos Show?
Listen, I make a lot more than when I was on the Springer Show. And at the Springer Show, then they also gave me the voiceover work. So, like coming up next on Springer, well, that's $100,000 a year. So I was making like $350.
Oh, sick.
So
while you got your own show, you're doing voiceover, making money from Springer.
No, I'm saying when I was on Springer.
Oh, okay. When you were on Springer.
So after a couple of years went by, they cut the guy out that was doing it and they gave it to me.
Got it.
So now I'm making my base awesome. Out of 250. I'm doing 100. So at the time, I think I was making like 365.
Yeah.
Okay. When they offered me the show, they came in to me with $350,000 to do. I go, that's less than what I'm making now. Like, they had
I'm
no
not
idea.
taking a pay cut to my own show.
I'm like, here I'm thinking they're going to offer me like $1 million. Like 350. I'm like, that's less than I make now. They didn't even know, man. Like, sometimes it's so crazy. So how it's changed my life now? Not a lot is the question.
Yeah.
Do I live a very comfortable lifestyle because of the money? Yes. I own a couple homes. But my life didn't change that much because I was, when you're making, like I said, 350 and my wife was making, probably around that neighborhood. So together, and this was, during the mid 2000s, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we didn't live like, we're not like rappers or,
Sure.
The Jersey Shore people spending all their money. No, I mean, we bought a nice little condo and we made money on it. Like, we bought things that appreciated. We didn't buy a lot of depreciable assets.
I love that. That's a great lesson right there.
Yeah. And even the first time we said, because then when we got married, I started buying apartment buildings in Chicago because, I was like, got to have something to fall back on.
Sure.
And the first time we ever bought anything that we considered a depreciable asset, which it really wasn't, was a lake house in Wisconsin. And now that thing's
blown up,
probably triple what I paid for it, but we bought that, and that was the first after my season 1 of my show. And I still own it, and I love that place. It's like my solitude of fortress, like Superman. And I remember sitting in my yard, a big yard, right by the water. And my buddy Scott Pritchard, he's a friend of mine, but I met him like to be like a groundskeeper at my house, like, because I'm not there a lot. And I remember telling him, boy, if I could hold on to this property for 3 or 4 years, if I could just get 3 or 4 years out of my show, maybe I could hold on to it. But now, everything in my life is paid for. I have no debt.
Wow.
Every house I own is paid for, car, nothing. I have no debt. My kids' college is salted away. So that's how it maybe changed my life, is that no mortgages, no debt.
I love it. I just, Steve, your story is awesome. Like, you're making $22 an hour as a cop. They ask you to put on a tie for $35 an hour. You're like, sure, do whatever you want. Then they pay you $250. You don't negotiate. They want you in the hosting role, and you start to say, I know my value, pay up. Right. Now you got your own show, and from $35 to saying, yeah, throw a tie and pulls people's pants down, I'm in. $350K for my own show, fuck off. Let's talk.
Right.
let's negotiate.
Well, and at that point, I ended up getting an agent.
Yeah,
he's been my agent for the past 16 years. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story.
When you get to this position, you have to have an agent, just because it's not just base pay. Now you're talking about profit sharing and, gross revenue and all this other stuff, digital, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's so complicated. And I actually had to hire contract lawyers and everything else to, get where I'm at. So yeah, at this point, there's no more negotiating my own.
And I think that's a lesson for everyone. Partner up with the people that know best. Steve did it as his career grew, and that's a huge takeaway. Steve, if you guys haven't seen, again, go check out the Steve Wilkos Show on all social media platforms, and it's on NBC. Before we get your trading secret, I have the listeners, they're called the Money Mafia. They have some curiosity questions from those that know all about you. So I'm going to do a quick rapid fire on some of those. Do guests get paid to go on the show?
No. Now, they will get compensated if they can prove like they're missing a day of work or something. Yeah. We try to compensate them for that. Or if they hire like somebody watch their kids for a day. But we don't pay, because if you paid people, they would make up stories and become professional guests.
Okay.
So and listen, if you look at most of our stories, you probably Google search them, and it's a legal situation where they're at right now. You know what I mean? They've been arrested, or they're in some kind of adjudicating some case. So our stories are 100% real.
That was the second question the Money Mafia had. Are any of these stories fabricated or lies? And you're saying these are all based on legitimate things.
But it's interesting you say that. Just real quick. We did a story in the last couple of weeks, and I walked off stage and I asked my wife, I go, is that story real?
Wow.
And she goes, yeah, I was wondering the same thing. And we offered them to take lie tests, and I think we might air in it, or if it hasn't aired already. And the one came back telling the truth. The other one came back inconclusive because I think there was drugs involved or something. So even when I thought it was fake, I said, let's ask them to take another lie detector test to make sure the story's real. And I think it passed.
That's awesome. Yeah. Guys, just that clip, I'm telling you, if you see this stuff on social media, go take a break from your day. Check out the Steve Wilkos Show. These clips are unbelievable. It's just like such a great break from the day. The Money Mafia want to know how much impact you as a host get on the whole production and creative
0.
and things like that.
I know my place, because I know a lot of talk show hosts. And now if you look at the credits on the show, they have me listed as executive producer. I couldn't produce my way out of a wet paper bag. Now, I'm in a very fortunate position of my wife being my executive producer. She's the best executive producer in TV. And I think if you talk to most people in the business, there's not a lot of people that would dispute that. She took a nobody and made me a success. She turned the Jerry Springer Show in the mid-2000s when it was sinking, reversed the trend and kept Jerry on the air for 10, 15 more years. I stay out of the producer's way. Now, I read 3 newspapers a day, and I'll see a story that I want to do, and I'll say, hey, can we try to get this? Mm-hmm. But other than that, I get the hell out of the way. And there's stories I don't want to do. Like my wife's like, okay, we're doing this. I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I've learned now just to do it because she's usually right, and the story rates really well. So as far as the production of the show, and when hosts become where they want to get really involved with their show, that usually doesn't work out too well.
Yep. I think, again, it's another lesson people could apply to no matter what your job is.
Stay
in your lane and do it best. Yeah. All right. 15 years, the 16th season just premiered. What's next for the show? What can we expect?
We do a show that nobody else is doing. When you watch daytime TV, everybody's doing celebrity-driven, movie, book, song. We're doing real-life stories that people are involved in every day. And we're kind of out on our own little island. Nobody's coming after us. The Jennifer Hudson's coming out, but now she's got to compete against Kelly Clarkson. And, we got, I don't know who's the other new show that just came out. Oh, we even got Karamo now, who's taking over for Maury. And, he's more, I would say, I haven't really seen a show, but I think it with us. And like Maury and Jerry, we have our own little niche. Mm-hmm. And with our show where we do the lie detector test and we get to hard-hitting stories and stories about abuse, nobody else is doing that story.
Yeah.
Nobody in daytime TV is doing it. So we don't have to compete with anybody. If you want to watch, all these shows with celebrities, you got 1 million to pick from. When you want to watch a show about everyday people in tough situations, you watch my show.
You watch the Steve Wilkos Show. Steve, this has been amazing. Your career journey is unbelievable. Never say never. Extremely unconventional and successful. We got to leave with a trading secret. Trading secret someone couldn't find in a textbook, a classroom, or Google about life, money management, or career management. What can you leave us with?
I'll say this. People ever since I've been in TV say, you're real lucky. And I am real lucky. But I always tell young people, luck does not find you laying on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I hustled. When I was going to be a cop, and I was very, very fine being a cop. But I hustled. I bought property. I saved up money to buy buildings. I never spent money on things that, again, like I said earlier, that didn't appreciate. I didn't buy things that depreciated. I bought things that appreciated. And I never said no to an opportunity. I hustled. I worked all these side jobs, and that's why Mike asked me to work the Jerry Springer Show. He knew I was a guy that said, hey, you want to work security? I was going to say yes. I wasn't going to be that guy, well, I'm golfing tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I got this tomorrow. No, $35 an hour, I'm there. So I tell people all the time, you got to make your own luck. You got to make your own breaks. And if you're sitting at home watching TV or laying in your backyard tanning or, those are nice things to do, but if you have an opportunity to do something else to get ahead, you do it because you never know where that opportunity is going to lead. And like I said, one day working a security job, I've got my own TV show. I was a cop. I have a talk show that's been on for 16 years. I met my wife. I have my kids, all because of the Jerry Springer Show. I live an incredibly nice, comfortable life. I've gotten to do things, met celebrities. I met all my childhood heroes, Mike Tyson, Ernie Banks, Pete Rose, everybody in the sports world I've met. I've gotten to go to Kentucky Derby. I've gone to, the Indianapolis 500. I've been to Amsterdam, London, all these different countries because of the show, because of being in TV. And that's because I said, yes, I will work that gig tomorrow.
And it's a hell of a trading secret. It's a testament to you being here. Your work ethic as a cop, then you do Jerry Springer, then you would go do night shifts at bars 24/7, and today on your day off, you're doing this, cheese board challenges and more. It's a testament to you, Steve. Where can people find you in the show if they need more Steve Wilkos in their life?
Well, we're on Facebook at The Steve Wilkos Show, Twitter at Steve Wilkos TV, Instagram at The Steve Wilkos Show, YouTube at The Steve Wilkos Show, and TikTok at The Steve Wilkos Show. Just go to stevewilkosshow.com, check your local listings. We're all over the country. You'll just find, where we are in your time.
Check it out. If you need a release from life, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable entertainment. Another episode of Trading Secrets you can't afford to miss. Steve, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Got it.